Hey, I'm Becky Drost. Thank you for tuning into the Guerrilla HR Podcast. So as HR professionals, we are in the middle of real workplace challenges every day. Things like engagement, retention, culture, and employee experience are not just buzzwords for us. One of the hardest pieces of this puzzle that we have to try to solve is collecting information from employees and then acting on the knowledge and the opinions that our employees have shared with us. My guest today might be able to help us. Coby Skonord put in his 2 weeks notice on his first day of training at a Big Four accounting firm fresh out of college and left to start his own company, Ideawake. His software company, Ideawake, provides an idea management platform that helps companies double their ROI they're achieving from crowdsourcing the ideas of employees. This also cuts down on the time that it takes to manage those ideas. Let's welcome Coby. Coby, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
So I will say often when I have guests, I have a little bit of background knowledge or some information where I feel like I can hold a good solid conversation. And I have to say that your area of expertise and what you do is definitely a little bit different. So honestly, I'm a little nervous, but I'm also really excited.
Sorry, I think we'll make it through just fine. I'm excited too.
Perfect. So why don't you start? Just tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get into this and create this business?
Yeah. So long story short, I am a reformed accountant, is what I like to say. So I went to school for accounting and finance. Originally got a job at Ernst & Young, and then ended up putting in my 2 weeks on the first day of training and started my company. So, had great support system set up, which allowed me to do that. And it was a long journey. I thought I knew what I was doing. I was 23 years old, right? I got a job. I'm like, if I could get this job, I can definitely do this. Mm-hmm. And it was not the case. So, it took a long time, a lot of failure, a lot of iteration, but then, finally made it. And that's, what we do today is Ideawake. So.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love the courage that you had at 23. It took me a lot longer before I was willing to jump out on my own and start my own business.
I always say it gets harder every year. So honestly, I don't know if I give you all the props. I don't know. I'm 36 now. When I started at 23, at 36 now, if I was starting, I don't know if I would have the courage to jump, honestly. So. Yeah.
Well, I think this episode is going to be our best ever. Like, you're amazing. No, you're amazing. So to actually get into the real topic. So having worked through HR, one of the things that we always want to do is get feedback and get input from frontline employees and people who are actually out there doing the work. And it's hard to do that. So what are the barriers that you see when it comes to getting that input? And then how does this platform that you created help people overcome some of that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, if I had to to try to cater to your audience too, right? And overall from an HR lens specifically, from what we found, and we do our own testing, benchmarking, and do our own primary research as well. So if you look at it, it would come down to one word, which is transparency, which is not rocket science, but the hardest things to do are the easiest often to explain at a high level. So what we found from what our platform does, right, is it's called Ideawake. It's an idea management platform, but really it's a digital suggestion box that provides transparency and automates a lot of the transparency. And that's the main value add that we provide. So what we found is that employees, in terms of feeling heard, care a lot less about whether their idea is implemented versus the speed at which they hear feedback on the idea they shared, whether their peers can actually hear feedback or share feedback on that idea. And regardless of if the idea gets implemented, because on average 95% don't, folks will continue to share as long as they get feedback on an idea that they shared previously.
Yeah, I think that is really a critical piece of it. So when I've talked to employers in the past, or even when I've been the HR person on site somewhere, I think that closing the loop and that circling back with people, not to get into jargon, but really does make a huge difference. I can see, and you've got the data to support it, that says people want to know that you at least thought about it.
Yep.
Even if you don't do it, like in my world, I do a lot of comp work. And so when I talk about transparency, it's the same thing. People will still say, I want you to pay me more. But if they have some transparency and they understand how you made the decisions and like why you're paying what you're paying, they'll be okay with it.
Yep. 100%. That makes perfect sense as well. It really is. It's like, we're all humans, right? Like you and I as well, right? On the podcast now, and it does make logical sense. It's once again like some of the simplest things conceptually are the hardest to execute on, especially when you do like a large program, like asking for feedback and or like you do 360 reviews. What's nice is those are like tied directly to a manager, and the manager has to do them if they're implemented in the company. For programs like this, a lot of the time it's not put into like quarterly goals for like a manager. Right. Or the person that's doing the reviews. And so that's where like a lot of the times these programs get a bad rap.
Yeah. I'm curious what it looks like. So if you have somebody who goes on, they put something in, how is it shared? And how do people that, the man or the company, how are they able to then go in and like comment and give feedback about the suggestions?
Yeah, so going back to the theme of transparency, we make it very much like a social media platform, right? So the front end for like 99% of folks that engage with it, we don't do, our largest deployment's 150,000 people. So you can't get that many people in a room to train them. And so we make it look, it doesn't look like Facebook or like Twitter, but it is very similar in terms of being like social media, like a social media like feel. Folks log in, there is like, you have challenge topics, you have different topics related to an organizational goal. You click post idea. Everybody pretty much at this point knows how to like fill out a form, right? And so once they do that, that idea is publicly visible to like anybody who has access to the challenge or campaign, some people call them. And so then folks can either like, you can either vote for them. Some folks like won't have voting, but start rating, and then you have commenting. So folks will add on to ideas, and those can be incorporated back into the idea and give like shared, basically shared recognition, right? And you can naturally and just organically build teams. So, but it's come in, post ideas, comment, vote. Very similar to what you would see on a Facebook.
And I love how interactive it is.
Yes. And
I think,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing that we really focus on is by doing like, once again, none of this stuff is rocket science, but once you do it for 13 years, you start to see trends. And so folks will often just like launch this and just leave it always open. By doing these time-based campaigns, you treat it like you would a 360 feedback review, or you would like the annual weight loss challenge the companies used to do, where you have like a cadence that's set up. And so you can normally engage a lot higher like percentage of the employee population, and you do it like 2, 3, 4 times a year in different departments.
Yeah. One of the things I like in hearing about some of the interactive concepts and then the transparency is that it's different than just a one-time survey where you send something out, you collect this feedback, it goes into a black hole, compared to this where you can potentially actually take those ideas and do something with it. How can we go from the black hole where we have no idea what happens to actually then doing something with the ideas that employees are bringing forward?
For sure. So what an employee sees, right, when they engage with the system is very different than an administrator or a subject matter expert who's assigned to do something with the idea. It's still, we keep it simple, but we have workflows that are built into the system. So when something gets submitted, you can customize these to the nth degree, which is a gift and a curse. But once an idea is submitted, most common example is it goes to a manager or a subject matter expert to get reviewed based on the category of the idea. And then you can set up a workflow in order to take it from that subject matter expert review to like scoping it, building a business case, getting leadership approval, and then ultimately implementing and measuring impact on the submission. And so every time the idea changes, we call them stages within Ideawake, but equivalent of status would be everybody's lingo that they normally use. Every time the idea changes status, you can folks will get notified. So not just the submitter, but anybody that follows the idea and or has voted for it, you can customize it per stage. And then you can give points. The system's gamified as well, so you can give points to the person who shared. And those can be redeemed as an example if you have like a benefit system or like a lot of companies have like external gamification systems they use that we integrate with, so you can take those points and actually spend them somewhere to give recognition and feedback beyond the platform itself.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I worked for an organization years and years ago, and we had a big implementation for a new system. And so lots of different people involved. And throughout the process and then after, they had these massive Excel spreadsheets. And I love Excel. I do a lot of my comp work in Excel.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, collecting like what worked and what didn't and what questions are still out there. And it just felt like a mess. And the more people added, the messier it got. So I love the idea of this because you're with those statuses as they move through, you can actually keep track of this stuff.
Yes, and keep track of who isn't doing the stuff they're supposed to be doing, right?
Yeah.
Which is it's just the nature of the beast, right? So that's going to happen, but you get reports on that and automatically bump it to folks. So yes, it makes it more. Once again, it goes back to transparency.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you've noticed in companies that do this really well? Obviously, transparency is a key piece of that, but what are some of the patterns that you've seen?
Yeah, if you summed it up, most companies some companies that come and do this want to create the next iPhone, but do budget it for like one FTE and
right.
$10,000 in budget. And so where we see work best is when you start small, get a high percentage of your employees engaged up front. That part is the easy part, honestly. The thing that you want to do, though, is leadership. The ideal state for this program is that you end up at a point where it is treated like a annual survey that you do or a 365 review, like on a quarterly basis or like pulse surveys, where there's an expectation and it's baked into managers and or whoever is owning the program. It's baked directly into the incentive is the wrong word, but like the incentive structure, right, of the overall company, because that's what quote unquote culture actually, in my opinion, is.
Yeah, like are you promoting the behaviors you want? And if the behavior you want is for people to make suggestions and for them to be acted on, then you want to measure it, and then that's how you hold them accountable.
Precisely. And so few companies you can't walk in. The tricky part about it is when you start the program, normally consultants come in before they buy the software, right? And so that's not baked into the original plan. And so what we do is we nudge leadership along, and we're a software as a service company, right? But we've productized a lot of the consulting behind it so that like ultimately, but as a function of going through the process, you end up at a state, if it's successful, where it is baked into those reviews and it's actually baked, quote unquote, the culture of innovation is really getting it into the incentive structure of everybody from the front line to managers, directors, up to senior leadership.
Yeah. Have you ever seen it like abused, or where you have people go in and put wildly inappropriate things? I just think of, some of the places I worked in, give people access what they might do.
So it's actually really rare, but in manufacturing environments, it depends upon. Answer everybody loves to hate is it depends. So if you look at like the entire history, there are less than 24 posts total that we've ever had to hard delete out of the system. Some companies that are concerned about that will start off and have a review process up front where everything is private until it's moderated basically and reviewed. But it's going back to the fact that the system is tied to when somebody shares an idea. Some companies have it where you see it is when you have anonymous posting. So by default, there's an optional configuration where folks can opt in to be anonymous when they share their idea. You never see it when there is no anonymous option, which can be toggled on or off. But you will see it sometimes when you optionally can be anonymous. What we've done to circumvent that, and we do this up front, is saying simply you can be de-anonymized. Because you can't in the front end of the system. We have to do a special poll for leadership, but you say that up front, and then it's very, very rare where you actually get negative feedback like that.
And that's kind of what I figure. I mean, I feel like places that want to do this actually want the feedback because they wouldn't invest in if they didn't, and so hopefully they're already down that path of culture that sets up the right expectations. But I just there's always a couple out there.
Yes, there are some bad cookies sometimes. But like I said, we found it's pretty rare.
Yeah. And how do you feel like it works for getting some of those frontline employees, particularly, as you said, like the manufacturing industry? And I've done some work in manufacturing as well. And I do feel like a lot of times the frontline employees get left out and there becomes this us versus them, and it's management, supervisors and above. And how have you seen this work successfully to truly engage some of those frontline workers?
Spending lots of money on building functionality that is just so we 100% that's a super common thing. And so what we did was we invested a ton in getting functionality where folks don't have to log in. They enter their employee ID instead of their email, like being able to log in with employee ID because they don't have a company email address, doing QR codes, doing no like login required, and just integrating it right into the line, putting it in break rooms. So we've built out a lot of functionality to enable true frontline versus going to supervisor, because one of the things that we found is that supervisors, it either happens or there's a perception that it happens that supervisors, frontline staff don't get credit for the idea if it's shared by a supervisor. And so we've like I said, invested heavily into basically making it very easy for folks that are on a line to engage with the software, even like without a smartphone.
Yeah, I love that, because I have definitely seen not with this kind of software, but other tools. I mean, even things like open enrollment and benefits meetings and things like that, where employers really struggle to get some of those employees because they don't have the company email and they're not regularly logging in to check something. So I love that you have made it easy, scan a QR code and have it in a break room and have it integrated in places that they're already going.
Yep. You just build it into the customer journey. And the customer in our case is, right, a frontline worker. So
yeah. When you work with all of these different companies, I know you mentioned there's a consulting piece that has to happen up front before somebody figures out if this is the right thing for them. What do you feel like are the real first steps that somebody has to take before deciding if this is something that they want to invest in?
So a lot of folks, beyond, if you're not collecting fee, even in the age of AI right now, we're growing faster than we've ever grown before, and a lot of it's identifying AI use cases at the front lines. If you're not if you're a large company of over 100 employees, there's like intimate and nascent knowledge that exists from folks doing the work every day. So if you're not doing this, regardless if you invest in a tool, right, to manage the overall process, there is just a no-brainer ROI from doing this. The first step to doing it is simply running a pilot with, you can set this up in a couple days using a Microsoft Forms and a spreadsheet to see the feedback you get. The main thing of time investment is you have to make sure, if you're going to do that, to justify investing in a tool, that you allocate somebody just for leave it open for a week, see how much feedback you get, and allocate somebody's time for 2 weeks just to go through each submission and give personalized feedback. That will set you up for success. The main mistake folks make is they leave it open for 2 months, they get way too many submissions, and then they don't get back to everybody. Or they send out one generic message, and then half or 3/4 of the people never hear back, and that kills the program before it even gets closed.
And then it just completely backfires.
Yes, all the time. All the time. So the most important piece is, once again, the thing that we automate, and it's not rocket science. You just have to go through the submissions. Even if you template out the responses for the categories, if you say hey, maybe in the future, have a pre-canned message for that, copy and paste it. It goes a long way. Really does.
Yeah, I think this is so cool as a tool, just because thinking back, and it's been years since I sat on site for a company, but where we would do surveys, and then when we would roll something out, it's and this is actually tying back to something that you all said 6 months ago. So I think just the timeliness is amazing, and just the tool itself sounds really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it sounds very cool. So what for you, what kind of company is ideal where this could really help them?
So the program in general should just be implemented, regardless of what tooling you use. Anything over, honestly, as soon as you hit 15 employees, you should have like some type of feedback process like this in place. But for Ideawake specifically, right, or idea management platforms in a larger like industry, anybody over 100 employees can get a positive ROI from implementing the system. We work in like 17 different verticals. So it's a very like wide ranging market. It primarily is like a baseline of company size. And then also if leadership is willing to put in, it's not a ton of resourcing to implement a program like this, especially to get the feedback, provide transparency, even if you implement 5% of the ideas. But it's really A, over 100 people. B, leadership has to be able to allocate somebody's time to look through these. It's 2.25 of an FTE, right, at a manager level to help like orchestrate the program.
Yeah. But then if you're getting all these ideas, I mean, just think of what you could do. So spending that time, that 0.25 FTE could really make a huge difference for an organization.
Yeah. And it's the thing is, when you start to get more complex, you're going to have to, it becomes more resource intensive if you're talking about like product, right? So like as the projects get larger, then those are the things that oftentimes will fall through the cracks. So if you set the expectation up front that you're looking, we call them quick wins, small ideas with big impact. If you start there, and that's all you do, by the way, then it will pay. It's worth its weight in gold, and folks will feel heard. Even if, once again, you implement 5% of the ideas. If you do go to the larger scale, it becomes more time intensive and more expensive. We found that, I mean, for the companies that do the like IP related things, like if we go to engineering, product development, there's a lot of patentable things that come out of engineering that folks at leadership levels wouldn't have thought of. So,
sure. Yeah. I can definitely see that. Knowing people who have worked on things that are patented, I think they would totally agree.
Yes, they would.
Yeah.
For sure.
So if anybody wants to find you and learn more about Ideawake, how should they do that?
Yeah, you can just go to our website, ideawake.com. So it's IDEA. Well, actually, it's spelled right behind me back there. So yeah, ideawake.com would be the easiest. You can contact us, book a demo, or just start a free trial.
Awesome. Well, Coby, thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with me and talking about this. I think this is awesome. So I wish I had tools like this when I sat in that HR seat for sure.
Well, thank you. It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks. Have a good one.
You too.
So what I heard from Coby is that employees probably have a lot of ideas and they want to share them with you. They actually like being heard. So go out and ask people what they think. Just be prepared for their answers and be prepared to give them a response. Thank you for tuning in to the Guerrilla HR Podcast. See you next time.
That's it for this episode of the Guerrilla HR Podcast. We hope you found some unconventional wisdom and actionable advice to help you in your own HR journey. Remember, we're all working together to build better workplaces. Want to join in the conversation? Send us your questions, stories, and maybe even your own guerrilla tactics to podcast@guerrilla-hr.com. And if you enjoyed the show, please like, subscribe, and share with your network. Until next time.